Hi there, and welcome to Draw With Me. I'm Danny Gregory, and I'm surrounded by cactuses, not just because I live here in the desert, but because we just had that incredible gallery show of all the cactus flowers that we drew last week. So thanks so much for sharing yours, if you did, and thanks for drawing along with me, which I hope you did too. So today is an exciting period in our lives here at Sketchbook School because it is our 9th anniversary. This whole month we've been celebrating lots of different ways of commemorating and I don't know celebrating all the different things that we've done. This is this week's month's newsletter, which has various things. We send this out every month, and here is a little post that we wrote about the fact that it's 9 years. In April 2013, we released our very first course, Beginning. Since then, Sketchbook School has put out 28 courses, 50 workshops, 220 Draw With Me's. I think this is the 4th year we've been doing Draw With Me. 81 Art for All, that's our podcast, and 1,380 hours of live Spark classes. I think that's actually a conservative estimate. I think we've done more than that. Most importantly, we've helped tens of thousands of people realize their artistic dreams. Thank you so much for being part of this amazing creative time. We couldn't have done it without you. So we've been making a lot of stuff. And if you sign up for our newsletter, which is free and you can get it with no fuss or muss, we will send you stuff that we've done, including some cool recaps of Draw With Me and some various other things. So that is, oh, and I also want to show this beautiful, beautiful card that we got, which is, I guess it's a birthday card, really. And it was sent to us by Kim O'Brien, one of our longtime students. Let me just hide myself here so you can see this whole thing. I mean, this card is so great. First of all, we have this whole beautiful cake here with a little twiggy in the corner. And then here's a celebration of all the classes that we did year after year, from seeing and storytelling beginning to each class that we did, and then all the way down to workshops and workshops and so many workshops, and of course Spark, little Spark things. So it's really cool to look at this and just see all the stuff that we've done. And how nice. Thank you for everything you did. Kim, I'm not sure if you're here today, but this is just a beautiful celebration of Sketchbook School. Thank you so much. It's really nice to have. All right, so what are we going to do today? What should we draw today? I wonder. Let me just put this card away safely. I wonder what... okay. Yes, here's our inspiration. Here's our muse. And yes, thank you very much. So yes, today we are going to draw crocodiles. Crocodiles. So JJ and I were talking this week about what would be a good subject. And we were talking about, do you remember, I think it was Inktober, a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, we drew a squid and we got really into the details of the squid, and it was just an opportunity to do textures. And it was really one of our favorite galleries that we ever put together, is all the different squids that we did. So we won't be drawing people wearing Crocs. No, we will be drawing the critter itself. And I have one here for us to look at. So yeah, so I think this could be a fun thing to do, just because the crocodile, it's an interesting shape, but it's also like one of these kind of detailed things. That was kind of another part of the inspiration. Was I was saying, like, what would be just fun to get in deep, get in there and really, do textures and patterns and stuff like that. So I think this guy will be great. I had thought about, oh, maybe we could do a car engine. And then we said, well, nobody really wants to have drawings of car engines. I kind of do, but maybe not everybody does. So, so I'm thinking I'm going to just start with a big fatty and just draw the general shape of him, and then kind of go in and draw the details, because there's all these, you know, there's all these interesting kind of patterns over here, and then there's all these patterns on his body, and different kinds of marks that we can make. So I think it should be pretty cool. And he's a reptile, but he's not like a thoroughly repulsive reptile. So I think that it will be a pleasure to draw him and to spend some good time doing it. You know, it's really nice to just get a kind of a complex subject for your drawing and just delve into it. So, should we maybe start drawing? How many are we going to do? We're going to do, John's asking how many crocodiles will we do? I think we're just going to focus on the one guy. So I'm going to do him kind of like biggish on my page. And that's it. So we just got this one model today. And we're going to jump into him, jump into the crocodile. Maybe you start with just his head. I'm going to start kind of sort of, yeah, around here above top of his head, and just draw an outline, taking my time, trying to draw nice and slowly. Draw nice and slowly, and crocodiles are fun. They're fun. They're not fun if they're attached to one of your limbs, but I think they are fun as characters. You know, you think about how many great cartoon characters there are who are alligators and crocodiles, and you know how Lyle crocodile. There's just a lot of great things that you can do with a crocodile. So, you know, yours could be cartoony if you want them to be. I'm trying to make mine relatively true to his observation, and just taking my time, drawing slowly. Let's see. So this is the line that's the top of his teeth, but then I'm going to try and come down and draw the top of the bottom of his mouth too. And it almost looks like his lower jaw sticks out from further than the top. Interesting. Like an undershot jaw, like you'd see on some kind of a small dog or a bulldog. So crocodiles, I'm not fully conversant in the differences between crocs and gators, but my general sense is that crocodiles, and this is a Nile crocodile. Nile crocodile. But just generally, I think of them as having kind of thinner snouts, being a little less kind of a more snouty, and less of like a big jaw. So then there's this little line down here. I'm already a little concerned about my proportions. I'm kind of feeling like I might have gotten something wrong. But don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. Because what will be mesmerizing about this gator when we're done with it, I think, is going to be all the textures we're going to put into it. So we'll come back and we'll fill all this stuff in. You know, maybe I'll just put his eye in. His eye is kind of about here. Yeah, I think his snout should have been longer. Okay, it's not. This is a rare species of short-nosed crocodiles. He's kind of like a little eyeliner back there. And yeah, so his body kind of goes back, and then we could follow that down that whole trail of his back, but I don't think we'll do that yet. I think we'll, sorry, I keep moving this camera to get properly centered. All right, so now I'm going to go up and start drawing this side of his body, which is just kind of behind the eye back here. Goes up. And then I'm going to draw that little foot. I think crocodiles are one of those animals that's like been kind of the same for millions of years, sort of like a proto-dinosaur. And another one of those dinosaurs that still live. Talking about birds recently, and those again are, I feel like dinosaurs on Earth. A lot of birds do. So, and then his tail is going to kind of sweep around. And come down. Looking at the negative space there between his snout and his tail. That makes it, gives us some kind of a guide. His tail actually ends about here, so I don't want to go too long. And then we can decide how careful we want to be with these little ridges. Do we want to be super accurate with it? I mean, we could do like exactly each ridge, but I think we're not going to do that because I may live to regret that later on. But let's make sure again that this tail is the right width. I'm going to draw this line a second time because I'm worried that it's, because I think that this tail needs to be about that thick. Is that true? I'm measuring the width of his tail and let's say the height of his head. So this part of his head is the same as that part of the tail. So it is actually thicker. And then just going to draw this ridge here. You know, I mean, another way that one could draw this is you could just sort of draw the general outline of him, just like it sweeps down there, and then go back in and draw the ridges on top of it. But I prefer not to have kind of guidelines, but just draw one line. All right, so there's his back leg is kind of coming up to here, and then this line is going to continue over here. It's deceptive. His body is really pretty wide and thick at this point, so I want to make sure that I don't screw that up. Again, so like the distance between here and here, that distance is the same as the width of his body. I just measured it. So I want to make sure, I'm just going to make up myself a little mark that his body's going to end up having to be that wide when I come down here. Yeah, there's a voice in my head saying that I'm getting this wrong. I know that voice, and I don't care. So, okay, so the top of the head, if I go across the top of the head, that is where the top of that back foot is. So we can put that back, put a little marker in there for his back foot. And then let's come back up his neck. And his neck kind of swings back up there. And then his elbow is back here, kind of comes in here. It's a little hard to see because of all the textures. A hippo would win a fight against a crocodile, although crocodiles are larger, powerful creatures. They cannot kill a fully grown hippo. Wow. terrifying thing. Let's see those two in battle. All right, let's move him back up here again so we can get access to this elbow. And then his kind of wrist. And his little fingers. What do they do with these fingers? I guess they use them just to walk with. I wonder if they're weapons. Probably not. When you've got a giant mouth like that. All right, so that's... Oh, I didn't do his back leg. Okay, so the back leg is kind of parallel with this leg. Let's see what the top of it is. Top of it is coming in sort of here. So it comes out, and then it's about that wide. Oops, you can't see. It's about that wide. Comes down, angles. And let's see, the bottom of his foot there is about parallel with this. Top of that foot. So that's about correct. And then give him his little toes. And then it goes up, and then it arcs out like that. So let me just move this crocodile away for a second. Okay, it's not embarrassing. It's a decent outline, I think. That's pretty good. All right. So now the fun part begins, which is to start filling in all these details. So we have to think of a strategy for how we're going to do that. Like how are we going to make this texture? You know? And I'm kind of thinking, I'm almost wishing that I'd done this in a thicker pen, but I can always go over with a brush pen again. But I'm thinking I'm going to take like maybe a 0.2, because I just drew that outline with a 0.5. So I'm going to start here with a 0.2. And maybe start here on his hand, because it's right there. And just start working on, it's almost like a little kind of grid at this point, right? It's like a little checkerboard. So let's just keep that in mind. It's not all of it's going to be like a checkerboard. It looks a little bit like corn too. Right? It's like a little corn, a vicious, lethal cob. And then these are kind of, but now we can start to get a little playful. We don't have to do exactly what we see. We can start to say, you know what, let's just have some fun with this. And let's just, we could make it more geometric if we wanted to, almost impossibly geometric, or we could make it more abstract and make it more random. But I think it's good to have a point of view as to what you want to do with it. It's not just sort of like start higgledy-piggling around with patterns and stuff, but just to say, okay, I want to have an idea of what I'm doing. And also, right now, it's kind of geometric, like a grid, but there are times where it might become circles, like on his neck. Like maybe we could make it more circular there and do more stuff with him. And also, we could randomly color in squares. Like that. It's your gator. Do what you want with him. Don't be restricted by the laws of nature. And then down his ribs, we could have these more panels. But again, we could do lines. But they're bigger. They're bigger because it's kind of bowing out. And he has this spine also that's going all the way down the center. But let's not get impatient and rush over there. Let's try and stick to the plan for now, at least. He also has like stripes almost here, stripes made of of checks. So rather than it being alternating, he has that, which we could do. I'm going to do it here too. Kind of bury it in that arm. And then when it comes to this part of him, he seems to have these rib things that are going across to the spine. So maybe we should start thinking about that spine. But I'm thinking I'm going to make it a bit more abstract. I'm going to make it up. In other words, I'm not totally looking at him. I'm just sort of making it up. I know generally that I want to arc towards here. So and yeah, I like that. So now, like, what do we want to do? Do we want to come out? See how he has sort of some darker stripes? Like he has patterns within patterns, which is sort of interesting too. But we could also just connect these things, and we could think of this almost like if you've ever done like Zen tangles or something like that. This is an opportunity to use these kinds of repeating, interesting patterns back here. We do some Zen tangling in Spark at Sketchbook School. It's pretty cool, and I particularly like it when people take these abstract patterns and then they use them to create an image of something recognizable. I think that's pretty cool. I'm not really great at that sort of thing because I just don't have the patience. But I think if you can get into a zone with it, here's another thing we could do. Look, we could go in different alternating directions and create almost a herringbone. But it is kind of calm and meditative to do this sort of thing, and that's part of the fun of it. And you could also do like circles or do other kinds of patterns. Like we could do circles of alternating dots, something like that. I think you can give little cues that say, I made this up. I'm making up what this is going to be like. And if you look at his back leg, it has almost like an accordion effect. So we could sort of enhance that if we wanted to. And so you could do that by going in this direction and then in that direction. Sort of, again, this tweed sort of look that will make it feel like it's accordioned. And his patterns kind of are only along the back and outside of it. It's so interesting to think, like, what was the adaptation that produced all this stuff? Because I'm sure that probably each alligator has unique markings, so their friends can recognize them. He almost looks like a sweater, some kind of like a elaborate Missoni sweater or something. And he's recognizable. All these alligators are wearing crocodiles are wearing different sweaters, but his friends know him because, oh yeah, here he comes with the accordion sleeves. He loves those accordion sleeves. Don't say anything about it to him. We could also do some stippling. Do some little dots. Fill some stuff in with dots. You remember Missoni sweaters? I guess they still make them. They're always a little Bill Cosby. I hate to bring him up, but all right. So now thinking about these radiating ribs that are coming off the back, I do like the fact that he has some that are kind of deeper stripes. but I kind of want to make them more varied. I think the key to this thing is variation. Variation, but that seems like they're relating to each other. Like each pattern is kind of relating to the ones around it. It's not just going off on its own. Slightly different, but so it's like you have different levels of patterning. Some that are like from far away, it looks like he's dark in the middle with some stripes. And then as you get closer, you see that everything is made up of more and more details inside. So it becomes more and more interesting that way. So it isn't just stripes. So then here, maybe put some of these things, and then maybe we could even have some that have concentric ones like targets every so often. And then, now we've got like the back of this actual neck thing that's sticking out here, sticking out from the torso. So we want to distinguish that from this. Then we want to have the spine is coming down and it's kind of attaching to the top of his head. So, and then he has, I just want to put in that eye because that eye, that kind of horrifying snake eye, and a couple nostrils. Let's think about this mouth. And I'm just kind of jumping over here, but it is attractive. It does make you want to do something in there. Boy, it's so nice drawing with a really good, sharp fine liner. I'm going to switch to an 01, which is slightly narrower. Maybe just to do some of the things in here. Yeah, a fine liner on smooth paper, I don't know. It is a certain sensual quality that this kind of thing has. Just like precision. I go through these phases where sometimes I just want to do this kind of super, detailed, precise sort of drawing. And other times I want to be kind of crazy and wild and a bit more random and colorful. Give him a bigger nostril. Yeah. I don't know what the difference is, because this kind of work, like right now, feels extremely satisfying, kind of like appeals to the OCD. But then there are other times when it's just too sort of niggly and fiddly, and I can't be bothered to work like that, and I just want to lash out like a gator, lash out like a crocodile, grabbing a unsuspecting wildebeest that strayed too close to the waterhole during crocodile feeding time, and just be loose and frantic and energetic and bold and devil may care. The same person, different people. Same person, different energies. And you never, you sort of can know how you're going to feel, because at the other time you could also say, doing something too bold and wild, it just feels too out of control. I just don't feel, I'm, it just, I don't know. It's like a bucking bronco sometimes doing something super improvisational and loose. You say, I just want to relax. I don't want that manic energy. I want something calmer. All right, so here he has like very dark areas, but with these kind of light little textures in there. So how are we going to do that? You could just kind of color it in very black, but I think what I want to do is create a darker area that stands out, but make it textured. make it still feel relating to the other ones. Because I've made the mistake before where you do something like this and you're like, oh, that's black. Let me just color it in black. Let me grab my brush pen. Let me grab a big fat marker and do that. And then it just doesn't integrate with all the other parts of the drawing. It just feels like um, either a mistake or something that was done at a different time. And it's better to try and approach it all kind of somewhat similarly. You see, there is some kind of a grid underlying these black marks, right? You can still see there's some little squares underneath that. So kind of want to capture that. But again, you can see that there's lots of different patterns and feelings going on in here. That's really nice. So, and like this, I'm now going to go over what I did with the O2. I'm going to do it with the O1. And you could also say to yourself, I want to draw the stuff that's closer with a fatter pen. And I want to draw the details on the tail, let's say, with a narrower pen. You could do that. You can also look at some of these shapes of the dark areas are not squares and rectangles. They are kind of more organic shapes. But I don't know that I want to get into that. I think I want to keep him like a more of a geometric gator. I want to keep it sort of feeling like I made him as opposed to the way he would be in nature. But you have a lot of different resources in the texturing toolkit, TT. You can draw parallel lines. You could draw, like we could do this, like real herringbone, where you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth like that. And you don't have to do all of it. You can just do a little patch of it. And you can do another little patch down here. And you can leave some white in between if you want to. Still all works. And here, so like it's kind of a nice way of doing something that's like a dark patch like that, but it's also has some light in it too. It has some light between the lines, and other parts could be much darker by doing repeated lines. But don't scratchy scratch like that. Try and do everything parallel. I think you'll be more happy with the results. See, like this area right now looks kind of different from everything else because it's so dark. So I can't make it lighter. So I'm just going to create a few more darker areas around here to make it feel consistent. And this back here, I'm going to continue to arc down across his ribs, essentially. I want to join these lines across his spine. But they're also different because it is, he's curled in like that. So, and then if you look at that tail is sort of interesting because it is much simpler grid. And so we can say, all right, let's keep it simple like that because it is another approach, another set of textures, but they are related to the others because they're also kind of a grid and they're corn-like. And then I could do some lines like that radiate all the way back down, but maybe I'll break them up a bit just so it doesn't seem too grid-like. And I can also make them not necessarily connect. So they're sort of a line, but they're more of a shattered line a bit. then I could take an even finer line. So let me see, what is this one? 005. So 005 is the narrowest pen I have, the finest pen, and I can use it to fill in these lines, these dark areas, but they're varied. So from far away, they look kind of like a big flat black area. But when you look closer, you can see that they're made up of lots of little lines. And that all these are things that just keep the eye engaged, because your eye is basically saying, at first it says, oh, that's just like a dark area. There's no more information to be gained from this. But then as you look closer, you say, oh, actually, no, it's not a dark area. It's made up of lots of little lines. That's kind of interesting. So the more kind of exercise you're giving your eye, the more food you're feeding it in terms of visual data, the more your eye continues to be engaged with the drawing and is spending time with it. And that's what you want. You want to be attracted to it. You want to kind of puzzle it out and say, what is going on in this drawing? First, it looks like one thing, but then I start to see other things. You want to break expectations, really. And look at this foot. His back foot here is kind of like a little webbed foot. Is all black, but I don't want to just color it in black. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make very fine lines. Each individual little lines, sets of lines. And then I'm going to kind of do some tweed back here, little tweed patches. So again, it looks at first like a black foot, but then as you look closer, you go, oh, it's not just a black foot. It's a black foot made up of lots of little herringbones and tweeds and grids and stuff like that. That's interesting. I want to spend more time with that. This is the sort of drawing that when you look at it, you see all the work that went into it. So it makes it interesting to look at. Go, wow, that must have taken a lot of time. And but also you get into a kind of a meditative zone as you're doing it. You're not struggling and sweating, and because you kind of concentrated and spent the time on that very first outline, right? So you're like, okay, I know I kind of got the basic guy right. I know that I have all the elements in it, and now I can just sort of let my imagination go, and it will come out looking like representational drawing. It'll look like fairly accurate Croc, but it'll be made up of kind of lots of little imaginative games and Easter eggs and hidden stuff, and that makes it cool. But that only comes from just spending the time of doing all this cross hatching and keeping it varied so that it remains interesting. That you could feel like there's thinking going on behind these, that there are decisions here. It's not, and the decisions are actually fairly almost automatic. It's kind of like there's some part of your brain that goes, okay, color that in, color this in. You don't necessarily have to make decisions about it. That's why I'm able to talk to you while I'm doing this, and yet my brain sort of knows how to decide, okay, let's color that in, let's skip that, let's make this kind of texture here. All those sorts of things are just kind of coming out. So as it's coming out, it makes it more, it's like some part of my subconscious is making these decisions, and that makes it more interesting. The more literal you are, the more perfect you are, the more super consistent you are, the less engaging it is, because your brain sort of knows, yeah, I know what that is. Like, that's just a bunch of like very regular grids. I get it. But if you make kind of tricks for the eyes and little hidden stuff, your eye is like, oh wait, that looks interesting. I want to play with that. And it's like, why is that a little diamond back there? And how come, there's like a little star back here? What else is hidden in there? Let me play that game and figure that out. Maybe there's a little spiral back here. Why is there a spiral? What else is hidden in there? So it becomes a game for your eyes, and it's just that much more fun to look at. And it's sort of like I feel like this is like a bit of a self, like a computer program that's running on its own in a way inside of me that says, let's just, I mean, you could be watching TV or listening to a podcast or something like that while you're doing this. And some part of your brain will just know, okay, let's put in a little square here. Let's put in 4 little circles back there. Let's do all this stuff. It's not it's not taking your full brain. I don't know quite what the neurostructures involved are, but it definitely feels like I'm separated into the part of me that's talking to you, the part of me that's thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch, the part of me that is feeling a slight ache in my wrist from doing all these lines, and the part of me that is doing these grids. Okay, so now let's pay attention now. We're going to draw and figure out how to make this spine and these um, the little fins, or whatever they're called, the little grid back here. We want to make sure that that feels a bit different, because if you look at him, the original photo, it is dark, and each of these lines is kind of tying into these little vertebrae. So you might want to make that feel a bit different. I think this is probably more boring to watch than it is to do. That's part of the problem with doing one long detailed drawing is it's probably not that much. It's kind of uninteresting. If you like fast forwarding, like, okay, what's it going to look like when it's done? I get it. You're doing a lot of little patterns, fine. But I'm enjoying doing it, so too bad. That's why we don't do this kind of thing that often. But when we do, it's really good. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what you've done. I'm hoping that you're drawing along with me and that you're making your little gator, your little croc. I've got to stop saying gator. It's not a gator. Now you could, if you wanted to, add some color in here. You could do little bits of colored ink. You could put some kind of a wash over the whole thing. But I really enjoy seeing how black and white can feel like color by giving you lots of different varieties of tone. Now let's have a look. Let's kind of step back and look at him and think: is there enough variety of tone? Like there's a variety of texture, but there's like this area is kind of dark, that area is kind of dark, this area is a bit dark, and in here is dark. But I feel like I need to have some, maybe some just cross hatching that isn't the pattern, but is sort of more the tone. So if you understand the difference, it's like here's a thing that's made up of all these textures. It's kind of like, again, if you took a sweater, here's the sweater, it has all these pattern textures on it, but there's also light that's coming onto this guy. There's light that makes him into a three-dimensional object, and that light is also going to make shadows, and so you want to indicate that in some way without taking over the patterns. So again, if you imagine an alligator that was like a chessboard, it would also be a three-dimensional object. And if you stripped away the chessboard, what would be the pattern of the tone on it? What would be the shading? And how would you distinguish between the natural shading and the pattern? And do you have a different strategy for doing it? Like I'm just doing parallel lines as hatching, but they're crossing over the pattern there. So it's making it more three-dimensional, and it's suggesting that these little lines here are not pattern, they are shading, whereas these lines here are pattern. Do you understand the distinction? I hope that's not totally incomprehensible. Because now I've got this whole area in here that feels a little naked. So I'm drawing these sort of irregular little circles. And I could also go back in and maybe trace over some of these lines, the outside lines of him. So it's rather than just being a big fat line, it's actually a line that's made up of little lines, just the very outside of him. That will, I don't know, again, just give some variety. Not just a big fat outline, but something that feels a bit more interesting looking. So there's so part of this is automatic, keep making dots here, keep making lines there. And part of it is shifting gears periodically and saying, okay, what other bigger decisions do I want to make about what I'm doing? And are there any other new elements I want to bring in? And I want to think about those elements a little bit before I just start automatically putting them in. Feeling pretty good about it. You know, this is the kind of thing you can spend hours. It can be a fun drawing to come back to. You know, you could come back at some other point when you say, you know what, I feel like continuing to just do little patterns and cross hatching. I don't want to challenge myself any more than that. Just want to relax and kind of almost doodle. But it's beyond doodling. I think this is going to be like a nice piece in my sketchbook that is more interesting than just a bunch of doodling. But you know, I might say, okay, let's take a break, put it aside, and then some other point you're like, you know what, I feel like listening to music. Let me just get that thing out and just keep cross hatching on it. The more work you put into it, the richer it becomes and the more interesting it is to look at. It becomes one of those things that you open a sketchbook and go, oh, whoa, look at that. That thing pops off the page. There's so much. That must have taken you forever to do. So many decisions in there. Yeah, but how long have we been working on this? For about 35, 40 minutes. You know, but we could easily spend more time on it. There comes a point of diminishing returns, and there also comes a point of making it just too much stuff, and then it's sort of out of balance. You know, so still stop periodically and assess what you're doing, and just think, is that, can I look at the whole thing now? And you know, I feel like this. I want this to be a bit darker. And yeah, like this whole part down here feels pretty bare. Pretty bare. Oh, pretty bear. What a pretty bear. But it's also nice to have a little bit of a break, you know. And then all this area back here that was looking kind of complex before is now looking a bit simple. That's part of what happens when you introduce different pen weights. Is the parts that didn't have all that variety look a little naked. His eye is such an important part of this. I want to emphasize it a bit. I don't want to go too crazy. But I think his eye is the expression. And I want to make sure that stands out. Which I think it does now. think that's pretty good. Yeah. Sandy put watercolor on. Yeah, that's something you could do. You could put just a single wash of watercolor over the whole thing, or you could go in with, you know, I'm not going to do it, but you could do colored pencil. You could do various things. What do you think? Do you like it? What about that yellow eye? Could do something like that. Could color in just that eye. Would that ruin it? Are you afraid? Are we afraid to do that? How about a little chroma flow? Tiny, subtle. Just a little thing. All right. I'm pretty happy with that, guys. Gator. Sorry, crocodile. Should we do that? Should we write? I'm just going to write it over here in case I just change my line later on and don't like it. There we go. That's a croc. That's a croc. All right. Cool. That was a fun exercise. I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope that you had a chance to draw a crocodile, or at least enjoy watching me doing it. I look forward to seeing yours. So please don't forget to share it. Yeah, so we don't have anything to give away this week. We will next week. And please share your croc on Instagram or Facebook, hashtag SBS Draw with me. Just write that somewhere in the post, in your comment, or in the schoolyard. If you're a member of the schoolyard because you've taken one of our courses, then please put it there. We're going to have a big cavalcade of gators there, I'm sure. And Danny'sEssays.com. I write an essay every Friday. I am sending one out tomorrow. If you've never gotten them, please do it. And also, I want to remind you to, to think about joining. Where is it? Think about joining. Is it here? No. Anyway, think about signing up for our newsletter. And I'd love to send you stuff about what we're doing and stories of our community, and there's all kinds of stuff that we're doing in Sketchbook School all the time. And you can become a part of our community. Just sign up for our newsletter. Go there and do it. All right, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and to say thumbs up, I love this, and all those kinds of other stuff that one is obliged to do as a member of the social network. Okay, thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing your crocs and seeing you again next week on Draw With Me. Have a great weekend.